What it do, what it do. It's your boy Andre Spruell, and you are tuning in to the Middle of the Fence podcast. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day, whether you're listening, watching, or both. As I like to say, time is the most valuable thing on this earth because we can spend it, but can't make it back. So as always, thank you for your time. And today's episode is going to be titled Lessons from Both Parents. And in this early journey of the podcast and thinking about my story and the origins, I just was thinking the other day about the examples and experiences set from both parents. So I figured, fuck it, let's do an episode about it because it ties into both sides of the fence. And so basically, I am going to unpack what I learned from both parents, what I learned from my mom and my dad. And when you grow up straddling tough terrain in affluent acres, your parents become your first teachers. Sometimes they show you how to love, sometimes they show you what not to repeat. And before I get into the lessons from each of my parents, a 2016 study published in PMC examined how children's mental health outcomes are shaped by parenting styles. So, a supportive, positive parenting way of being a parent. An example, emotional warmth, encouragement, was strongly associated with lower levels of depressive symptoms in children. In contrast, harsh or negative parenting behaviors were linked to more depressive outcomes, highlighting how everyday actions from parents profoundly impact emotional health. So, let me start with the light first. The example of love and consistency I saw from my mom. And I've mentioned her in episodes before. And if you follow me on social media, when I repost everyone that tags and shows love to the podcast, you'll obviously more often than not, you are going to see her posts as well. And she's always been a foundation of love and support. And as I've gotten older and progressed in life and have gotten to hear other people's stories, regardless of whether they grew up in a more affluent type of background or whether they grew up in a more urban type of background, I just assumed that all mothers were love and supportive, but that's not always the case. But when it comes to my mother, she expressed love daily, and it was in the very small details and meals, conversations, words of encouragement, writing a little note and putting it in my brown paper lunch bag when going to school, and also showing that same love and support for my siblings as well. Like, so loving and supporting that I could tell my mom, hey, I want to quit my job, give up on this dream of the podcast, and start backpacking through a different country. She probably wouldn't agree with me, but she would still be loving and supportive of it if she knew that it was in my heart to follow that and do so. So that's just an example that I thought of off the top of my head to emphasize that. And aside from it being just part of her nature, it also comes from the Argentinian roots because the Argentinian culture is all about showing love and spending time together. And I got the opportunity to travel to Argentina twice, back in 2023 going into 2024, and then first time in 2012. And that's what it is. Like, you won't ever really see anyone by themselves in Argentina. They're always with their family or a large group of friends. So because of the cultural aspect of it, you just tend to see that love and support around you. And it's just a reminder that no matter how independent or, just no matter how independent you feel that you are, especially in this American way of living, there is a bunch of people on this earth for a reason because we can all use a helping hand from time to time. And another lesson learned from her is the consistency through challenges. So even when life was difficult, she was able to find a way and provide stability, which I touched on a previous episode. So please be sure to check us out on your favorite podcast streaming platforms and on YouTube as well. And was, because I was someone, and people can relate to this. I'm someone that used to hold stuff in. Even if something was wrong with me, I'd be like, no, nothing's wrong with me. I'm Mr. Tough Guy. I'm good. I was like that ever since I was a kid. But she had an innate motherly ability to sense that, and always gave me a safe space to express myself, because expressing my emotions as a man, especially when you're a man that grew up in a predominantly Hispanic household and around black men, opening up about your feelings and emotions is something that was just so taboo. So she gave me the space to do that, and it's one of the things that I appreciate so much about her. So the love and support and the consistency through challenges is the biggest takeaways that I've learned from my mom. And it doesn't mean that it was always, butterflies and rainbows. We've had obstacles along the way as well. And, there was a point a couple years ago, as early as 4 years ago, where there was a slight phase where we weren't as close and weren't speaking, me, her, and my siblings, but her loving nature pulled through. And sometimes it's that analogy, where, and as I'm getting older, I'm pushing 30, yikes, you just learn that even family can be something that you want to distance yourself from, where you love them, but it has to be from a distance, like at times. But when you have a falling out or not on speaking terms, sometimes it's like a slingshot. You have the stick. For those watching, I'm trying to do my best for a visual. You have the stick, you put the rubber band in, you pull it all the way back, and then watch that rock fly as far as it does. And sometimes that's what happens. Sometimes things need to get pulled back in order to move even further forward and propel even more than what it was designed to. So those are the lessons learned from my mom, and blessed and grateful for everyone that I have in my life and that loves and supports me, whether it's through the podcast or life in general. But just as much as I learned from her presence, I also learned from someone else's absence, my dad. So I wish the story was the same with my dad, but to be transparent with my audience, I have not spoken to my dad in a little over 2 years, and this isn't the time for me to air out my family drama and put my personal business out there, but I wanted to open with that because that's an aspect that, again, regardless of whether you grew up in a Affluent Acres type of environment, whether you grew up in a tough terrain type of environment, people can relate with going time without speaking to one of their parents. And more often than not, if both parents are not present, then it's usually the father that is absent. And it doesn't mean that as soon as I was born, he was out the door and I never heard from him. He was around. He got me into playing basketball, which was such a big part of my life. He instilled in me that I am the brand, and instilled the importance of hygiene when I was very, very young, and was there for graduations and basketball games. But the tide started to shift once I got to college and wasn't home as much. And then we were speaking, I was making an effort, and then just contrast of how I view the world and how I choose to operate in it versus the way that my father does. And a 2023 review highlights how a lack of positive fathering affects children across different stages of development. So early on, father absence correlates with increased externalizing behaviors and social, emotional challenges, especially pronounced for boys. In adolescence, the absence is linked with a higher likelihood of risk behaviors and lower high school graduation rates. Your boy did graduate high school and graduate college as well, so I'm not part of that statistic. And though cognitive ability isn't as strongly impacted, the emotional and behavioral consequences are evident and lasting. And again, this is not meant for me to come off as bitter or vengeful towards him. It's just that when it comes to parents, they either set an example of how to live and what you want to be like, or it's the opposite. They set the example of what you don't want to be like. And when it comes to my father, I love him, he loves me, but he showed me more of what not to be. And one of the biggest things is doing this podcast, because he was someone, he's still alive. He is someone that just took the safe route in life. Live life by the book, get a job that you can be at for 20, 25 years, cash out the pension and live the rest of your life, because that was the way of operating and living, especially in his generation, because he's in his 50s and I'm 29. And choosing self-interest over family responsibility. For those that don't know me personally, one of my 5 core principles is treating others with kindness. And I always try my best to act selfless and always try to help out the person next to me without having any ulterior motives. And I just naturally operate like that. And that is something that is a contrast as well. And also to, again, like I mentioned, there was some positives with what he taught me as far as hygiene and being the brand and introducing the sport of basketball to me, that helped impact my life in a positive way. But when it comes to family, and this is just stepping aside from not just a father or a mother, just family in general, or even if it's a really, really close friend that basically was like family to you, there reaches a point where, and I've been on record of saying this, of how we're in a constant state of growth and evolution, regardless of what stage we're at in life. Whether you're someone that is on the grind trying to make it, whether you're someone that's trying to make an honest living and provide for your family, or whether you're someone that the world knows who you are, you have hundreds of millions to your name and things of that nature, we're all in a constant state of growth and evolution. And when you reach certain stages of that growth and evolution, there's certain people in your life that it's like, for those watching, I'm doing a visual of when you're again, the growth and evolution never is a straight line. It's always up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, right? But when you're going like this and constantly growing and evolving, sometimes people just want to stay stuck in their ways and don't want to be on that same train track of growth and evolution. And it costs way more sometimes it costs way more to stunt your growth and evolution, to go back down, to reach back for the people that you love and care for, that you want to bring with you, because you can't bring everybody with you. And if you can relate to that, please be sure to leave a comment or message me personally, because I feel like that's something, again, regardless if it's family, a really close friend, or people just in general, that's something that is really relatable. And the core lesson for the takeaway from my experience with my father is sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the examples of what not to repeat. And when you put both parents' lessons side by side, you see the full picture, the blueprint, and the warning signs. And especially when I contrast it to, because both my parents grew up in a tough terrain background. So going on the Affluent Acres side and seeing most of the mothers being similar to the way my mom was, and then seeing the dads be completely different more often than not, and usually a lot more positive way. It's just a night and day difference in realization. And again, I have love for both of my parents. It's just different lessons and examples set from each of them. And the biggest takeaways and reflections, just looking back in general, the duality of the parenting lessons and how big the contrast is. So how having both extremes gave me balance, and carrying my mom's support and being loving and supportive of myself and others while not repeating my dad's patterns. And many people have one parent who poured into them and another who drained them. And that's something that can be relatable. Again, many people have one parent who poured into them and another one who drained them. And how these lessons have impacted me personally, how I show up and work with others and interact with them, how I show up in the important relationships in my life. And obviously, when one day I'm a parent, it goes without saying which example I would rather personify. And that's why when I think about lessons from my parents, I realize they don't always come packaged in the way you expect. And just really, really quickly, there is like a spiritual belief, like if you're a deeply rooted spiritual person, I don't know if I fully believe this. I kind of do. I'm not gonna lie. I'm, your boy spiritual, even though I grew up in like a Catholic faith and background. Is when you're born, your parents are chosen for a reason, and and the examples set by them ultimately set you up for what you want and what you go after. And again, you either repeat the cycles that you were brought up in, or you decide to break them and start a new one. And I'm deciding to break the cycles and start a new one. So just some final thought as we wrap this up here. So parenting lessons aren't just about guidance. They're about reflection. You either carry what's good or consciously reject what's harmful. And because of what I got and what I didn't, I've built my own blend: love and presence as a core, and intentional avoidance of neglectful patterns. And the question that I pose to the audience today is, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from your parents, good or bad? Because we all have learned something from them. So please be sure to let me know. And again, leave a comment, whether you're listening or watching, and feel free to message me on my different social media platforms as well, which I have on the video and in the show notes. So be sure to show the boy some love. And again, thank you guys for tuning into this episode. And if you like this episode, when you're tuning in on your favorite podcast streaming platforms, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and leave a rating so we can continue growing this middle of the fence family. And if you're on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be the first to be notified when the latest episode drops. And again, no matter what side of the fence you grew up on, we're all more alike than we think. My name is Andre Spruell. Catch you guys next time.